Forget everything the European media says about America. The truth is, millions of European tourists seem to have melted away and cannot stand the coldness of their homeland after returning.
I miss the sense of adventure. I miss the people. I miss the freedom.
Fall in love with this country, and this was so emotional. I even cried in the stage.
From the choked tears of a German fan at the Southern hospitality, to the shock of an English girl realizing that the service in London is dull and rude, to the point of being frightening. They were shocked to realize that the media had been lying to them for decades. Real-life America is completely different from what they imagined. This video will reveal the deepest psychological shock dividing the two shores of the Atlantic. Why does America's warmth turn old Europe into a cold, closed room in the eyes of its own citizens? Don't take your eyes off the screen. The truth is about to be revealed. Let's start with the first moment when a British tourist just landed at Stansted Airport after a series of days experiencing paradise in the USA.
It's 10 to 11 at night, and we're back at Stansted Airport. Airport is so empty. We're literally the last people in the whole thing for today, and the gate closes in like 20 minutes. Oh my days. Why is everything shut off? Are we that late?
Returning after a series of days away from home, what greets the European guests is not warm smiles, but a chaotic disarray. You see, the roadblocks are set up every place, like a maze. The escalators are broken, forcing the elderly to struggle, carrying heavy luggage up the stairs. And at the corner of the street, there's a drunk man standing, shouting and cursing for no reason. Welcome back to the reality of your homeland, where it seems that every public service is operating sluggishly. This chaos creates an emotional clash when compared to what they have just experienced across the ocean.
I was in like a 7-Eleven there, and the police, they were buying like people's food and all that. They were just so nice. You would never find that in Scotland.
That is the image of friendly American police officers personally buying food for people at the 7-Eleven store. Or a warm-hearted Texan man proactively paying for beer and even giving a fancy Amarillo police badge as a souvenir. Your bubble of kindness bursts immediately at the gateway of your homeland. This is perhaps not just a random misfortune, but a clear demonstration of the contrast effect phenomenon in psychology. When you have just spent a series of days surrounded by Southern hospitality, where even a modest eatery in Texas or Alabama provides service as attentive as a 5-star hotel, your brain will automatically set that as the new normal standard of living. When suddenly being pulled back to the procedural, somewhat distant and indifferent service system in Europe, this stark contrast will create a strong mental shock. It's like you're soaking in warm water and suddenly get splashed with a bucket of cold water. If you've ever experienced the feeling of disappointment and longed for the warmth of America like these travelers, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel now. In-depth analyses of culture and psychology like this will be broadcast regularly every week for you to explore the world with us. But the contrast at the airport is just the warm-up. The real shock lies in the way people treat each other in everyday life. Why do Americans have the superpower to become friends after just 5 minutes of meeting, while Europeans are like hard-to-open coconuts? Let's move on to the next part to decode this extremely interesting psychological mystery.
Where you go in the US, it's like a completely different world. And I now understand fully why Americans don't travel anywhere apart from inside the US.
You literally waking up still thinking you're in this amazing, beautiful country where you've just been going around living your best life.
Europeans seem unable to forget the days of living and integrating into American culture. An English girl has just returned from the US. She shared that she had inadvertently brought back some typical American communication habits, also known as Americanisms, back to her hometown. When she walked into a local cafe in England, she flashed a bright smile, greeted the staff, and when leaving, cheerfully said, "Have a good one." Can you guess what the employee's reaction was? She glared at the girl as if she were looking at a freak. The employee didn't even bother to greet her, let alone smile.
No one can tell me that one of the worst feelings in the world is coming back to this place after you've been on like a holiday or been away for a while. Back to the UK, boys. Mate, I don't know what it is about this airport, but it's pretty depressing, innit? Like, if you know what I mean, if you're from the UK, you just know that feeling already. Like,
a former German exchange student in Texas. He used to think that Southern hospitality was just a myth from the movies, but in reality, he was completely won over by the attentive service, akin to a 5-star hotel at any casual eatery. Or the story of a breastfeeding mother struggling to carry her two small children at an American pool, who was immediately helped by a group of completely unfamiliar women who jumped in to teach her children how to swim and proactively gave her their phone numbers for future assistance. That spontaneous kindness truly astonished the European tourists. To explain this fascinating psychological and sociological phenomenon, experts often use a classic concept: peach culture and coconut culture. Americans are typical representatives of peach culture. They have an outer layer that is incredibly soft, sweet, and extremely approachable. They possess a superpower of turning a stranger into a close friend within just 5 minutes of brief conversation at a bar or event. They are ready to ask about life, share their passionate projects with full energy.
During this dinner, I felt like I've been again in the United States. You can tell that I kind of advocate and promote Americans. No, it's matching. I don't know why, but I felt really like a home just being with America.
However, every peach has a very hard pit inside. That initial enthusiastic friendliness of Americans is actually just the minimum standard for a polite daily social interaction, not an indication that they want to be deeply involved in your life or invite you to their weddings. On the contrary, we Europeans are like coconuts. The outer shell of a coconut, as you know, is extremely tough, rough, and coarse. A cafe employee in London or Munich won't smile for no reason because they believe that work is work, and there's no need to pretend to be sweet and polite. But if you are patient enough to get past that stubborn coconut shell, you will find the sweet coconut water inside. That is a sincere, deep, and extremely enduring friendship over the years. It is this distinctive difference that creates a new, satirical perspective. In Europe, if you suddenly become too friendly and open with a stranger on the street, their defense system will immediately go on high alert. They will wonder, what is this person up to? Planning to sell something or what? For them, friendliness without a clear reason is sometimes considered an invasion of personal space. But when you are used to being enveloped by the warmth of American peaches, returning to face the dry coconuts at home will immediately create a feeling of being neglected and isolated. If you are an American proud of your country's warm peach culture, or a European struggling to crack the coconuts around, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is the greatest source of energy for us to continue producing in-depth analytical content like this every week. The difference in behavior actually lies not only in personality, but is also clearly reflected in the way people design and use the living spaces around them. Why are spaces in America huge and open, while in Europe they are small to the point of being cramped? Let's move on to the next section to explore another shock about urban geography. Now, let's shift our focus to one of the most amusing visual shocks that European tourists experience when they come to the US, the physical scale of everything around them. We are watching a clip of an extremely excited Englishman driving a gigantic Jeep Wagoneer on the vast highways of America. He couldn't stop praising the cool air conditioning system and the spacious interior where the wind blew freely.
I bloody love driving in America. It's such a pleasure. It's such an absolute pleasure. We've had to change our car purely because we needed to, the old car had a service, but we've got this Jeep Wagoneer.
However, as soon as he landed back home, he looked out at the familiar road and exclaimed, "An American-style car wouldn't even fit through half of the roads here." Not yet. The visual shock also follows Europeans into Costco and Walmart, those gigantic shopping universes. Many people share that they only intended to buy a tube of toothpaste, but the vast space of the store somehow mesmerized them, causing them to walk out with a cart full of scented candles, snacks, blankets, and even garden furniture. In Europe, stores are often designed to be extremely minimalist, tidy, and cramped. When they returned, they were puzzled, wondering, did the planning committee hide the rest of the walkway?
So I've been to Walmart already. And that's huge. But what is this? Costco. It is even bigger than Walmart.
I'm way too European for this. I'm not able to understand. That's huge. Why is it so big?
This macro difference does not merely stop at the size of the roads or the pickup trucks. From the perspective of urban geography and behavioral psychology, we are witnessing a clash between two life philosophies shaped by physical space. America is a young country, built on an extremely vast expanse of land. Their urban planning prioritizes horizontal development. It is this abundance of space that has quietly fostered a liberal, free, and open mindset within each resident. When you live in a house with a spacious yard in front, a swing hanging from a large oak tree, and wide open roads ahead, your brain, happily,
I was also used to the sizes in European supermarkets, which are relatively small. Compared to Costco, it was just absolutely crazy to see everything in bulk, people buying.
In stark contrast to America, Europe represents historical narrowness. Most of the major cities in England, Italy, or France were built during the Middle Ages when people had to cluster their houses within city walls to protect each other. Space at this time is an incredibly scarce and expensive resource. When you have to live in cramped apartments in London, drive through narrow, ancient alleys, and squeeze into crowded subway cars every day, your brain will automatically activate a biological defense mechanism. To survive and protect the little remaining private space in an overly suffocating environment, people are forced to avoid eye contact as much as possible. Shrink your body and keep your face cold and expressionless. Establish an invisible barrier to prevent strangers from approaching. Therefore, the coldness of Europeans is not because they are inherently bad-tempered or hate their fellow humans. It is merely a completely natural urban survival tool to prevent them from being overwhelmed emotionally when their personal space is constantly invaded. The vast and generous expanse of America inadvertently liberated Europeans from their daily stifling boxes, so when they were forced to return to that box, they felt suffocated and longed for the free and easy atmosphere on the other side of the Atlantic. If you are also surprised by the magical connection between urban design and human personality, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Such in-depth content will give you a completely new perspective on the world around us. The abundance of space in America not only changed the way they build houses, but also gave birth to a super convenient service culture that once Europeans try, there's no turning back. What is it? Let's move on to the next part to decode the irresistible allure of shopping culture right from the car. When talking about freeing up urban space, we cannot overlook another very practical aspect that has quietly reshaped the daily habits of European tourists. That is the ridiculously convenient service of America. Let's watch the extremely funny reaction of an English guy who just returned home after a long trip. We can see him sharing in great agony, as if he were experiencing a desperate craving right in the heart of England. And what he craves to the point of madness is something that seems incredibly simple: crushed ice and fountain drinks. He confessed that in America, crushed ice combined with fizzy drinks like Dr. Pepper is so delicious that he couldn't find anything equivalent in England. When he returned home, the inability to find a truly smooth-shaved ice cup became a real mental blow. This struggle doesn't stop there. There is a very interesting scene where European tourists admit that after a short time living in the US, they return home, park in front of a store, and instinctively think, I wish I could just sit still in the car. That's right. They had completely assimilated into the American drive-through culture. From fast food, coffee, pharmacies to banking transactions, everything in America can be quickly resolved through a small window while you are still sitting in the cool air conditioning without needing to unbuckle your seatbelt. Why do seemingly trivial details like crushed ice, gigantic soft drinks, or the culture of drive-through shopping have such a devastating impact on European habits? From the perspective of behavioral science, we have an immutable rule: convenience is a one-way street. The human brain, from an evolutionary perspective, is designed to always seek the paths that consume the least energy to achieve a goal. When tourists are in the US, all their daily needs are optimized to the maximum. Do you want to drink water? You have giant cups of soda and unlimited free refills. Do you want to go shopping? You just need to drive to Walmart or Costco, where a universe from toothpaste to furniture is integrated in a huge space with a vast parking lot. Do you want to have dinner? You have drive-through lanes serving instantly. Your brain immediately programs this extreme convenience into a new normal. But when you return to Europe, you are pulled back into a manual reality. Do you want a glass of soda? You have to pay for each cup and there's no free refills. Do you want to buy food? You have to struggle to find a cramped parking spot, walk into a small store, queue up yourself, and bring your own bag from home. The frustration and disappointment arise not because the European service system is bad, but because your brain cannot easily downgrade its habits once it has become accustomed to the pampering of the American service system. There is a very amusing truth here. Europeans often have the prejudice that Americans are lazy and pragmatic. But in reality, Americans have elevated laziness or labor optimization into a high art of service and utility industry. They design everything to pamper your body and mind to the fullest. And in doing so, they have successfully assimilated even the most fastidious European guests, those who always pride themselves on a slow-paced lifestyle, walking a lot, and protecting the environment. And then, when they return, these very tourists are the ones who feel the most frustrated by the lack of convenience in their homeland. This shift in mentality is truly an experience that is both amusing and thought-provoking, isn't it? If you are also a fan of convenience, or have ever wished your hometown had a drive-through system and shaved ice as cool as in America, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. But wait, if America is truly warm, convenient, and wonderful, why do most European tourists carry an ambiguous fear before setting foot here? What have they heard? What do they believe? And what forces have painted a completely distorted picture of America compared to reality? Let's uncover this mystery together in the next few minutes. Now, let's delve into the most dramatic part of today's video. The dark side of biases and how reality has shattered the rumors on television. Let's watch the extremely candid reactions from English and German fans as they set foot in the US to attend the biggest football festival on the planet. Before they left, their brains were bombarded with a barrage of negative information from the local television stations. They were painted a picture of America as an extremely chaotic, dangerous land rife with vice, where people are rude and the culture is incredibly shallow. Some even admitted that they were extremely scared before boarding the plane. However, the reality on the ground was a cold splash of water that extinguished all those prejudices. Instead of a cold reception or lurking danger, what they received were open arms, warm handshakes, and absolute safety. They see women casually carrying designer handbags, walking alone on the streets without facing any threats. They see strangers willing to cover their meals and give them souvenirs just because they appreciate their presence. This stark contrast made a German tourist exclaim in frustration, "The media has been lying to us about America all this time. Why is there such a huge discrepancy between the image of America on European news broadcasts and the reality of everyday life here?" From the perspective of media studies and behavioral economics, the answer is much deeper than we think. That is, cultural protectionism. Try to put yourself in the position of social managers in Europe. Europe is a place with very high tax rates to maintain a massive social welfare system. To ensure that the people accept paying those taxes and are satisfied with their current lifestyle, the media needs to create an information filter. If Europeans knew that across the ocean there is a country where customer service, from casual dining to public services, is as attentive as a five-star hotel, where the cost of living has some very pleasant aspects, and the people are so warm-hearted that they are ready to help and embrace strangers unconditionally, then how many talented young people would want to stay in Europe to bear the exorbitant tax burden? The media often tends to sensationalize isolated events such as violence or conflict to attract viewership, inadvertently creating an invisible fear in the public. They focus too much on the cracks and forget that most of the American social structure still operates on kindness, spontaneous generosity, and an extremely cohesive community spirit. This contrast is a wake-up call. When millions of Europeans had the opportunity to set foot in America, they realized that the prejudices they had long believed were actually just distorted filters from the screen. They suddenly found themselves loving the positive energy, openness, and radiant smiles of the people in the land of the stars and stripes, things that the media back home had never once mentioned. But every party eventually comes to an end, and the European tourists must finally pack their bags to return to reality. When the pink bubble bursts, how do they face the harsh reality back home? Let's move on to the final part of the video together. America is certainly not perfect, and Europe has always been a great land with a rich history and irreplaceable ancient cultural heritage. But there is one truth that any traveler must acknowledge after stepping foot in the land of the stars and stripes. America possesses a truly unique energy, the energy of open opportunities and an unconditional, warm hospitality. The reverse culture shock that Europeans experience when returning home is not because they suddenly hate their own country, simply because they have tasted a different version of life where kindness, smiles, and care between people are prioritized. When you have experienced the feeling of being respected, welcomed, and loved by complete strangers, your brain will never accept indifference and apathy as a given anymore.